Hi there, and welcome to the deep dive. If you're studying the Kite Runner, maybe for an English class, you've probably felt the power of Amir and Hassan's story.
It's definitely a story that sticks with you.
Yeah, but what if there's more to it? What if that story is also, well, a kind of quiet rebellion?
Ah, that's an interesting way to put it.
Today, we're not just going over the plot. Our goal, our mission, is to really unpack how the Kite Runner works as this deep-seated protest against injustice.
Right. We're drawing on some analysis that's actually geared towards students, trying to help see those layers.
Exactly. We'll look at how the book takes on things like inequality, political violence, abuse of power.
And how all that big stuff is woven right into the personal lives of the characters we care about.
So let's start with that core idea.
Hmm.
The story itself is a form of protest. How does that work?
Well, think about it. By choosing to tell these stories, focusing on Afghan lives during such turbulent times, Hosseini is already making a statement. He's giving voice to experiences that are often, silenced or ignored. So the narrative itself becomes this act of resistance. It's challenging the silence, the guilt, the oppression that surrounds these difficult truths.
Resisting silence.
Mhm.
Like that. So for someone studying this, maybe looking for examples for an essay, how do we see that playing out?
Well, it's about visibility, isn't it? Whose stories get told. The Kite Runner puts Afghan experiences, including the really uncomfortable internal inequalities, front and center.
Uh,
Hosseini basically forces you, the reader, to witness these things. And that act of bearing witness through a story, that's a powerful protest against just, forgetting or looking away.
right. Indifference. And one of the first things that really jumps out, something often discussed in class, is that huge ethnic divide. Pashtuns and Hazaras.
Oh, absolutely. That's probably the most obvious social division in the novel. It's laid out pretty clearly.
Yeah.
You've got the Pashtuns as the dominant, mostly Sunni group, and the Hazaras, mostly Shia, in this really marginalized position.
And what makes it so effective, I think, is how Hosseini doesn't just state it. He shows it through Amir and Hassan.
Exactly. He personalizes this massive societal issue through their friendship, or maybe the complexities of their friendship.
Yeah, complexities is a good word.
Yeah.
Because you see Hassan, who's just so fundamentally good and loyal,
Mm-hmm.
but he constantly runs up against his social standing. Even Amir, his closest friend, struggles with it.
Right. And those moments where Amir fails Hassan, they're uncomfortable, but they show how deeply ingrained that societal prejudice is.
It's not just kids being mean.
No, not at all. It's the casual slurs, Hassan being shut out of education, the assumption of his inferiority. It's systemic.
Systemic, that's the key word. It's just accepted as normal.
And that's the insidious part Hosseini highlights, how normalized oppression can become, how even victims might internalize parts of it. It really makes you think.
It does. And that idea of ingrained power imbalance leads us right into the next big theme. Power and abuse.
Yes, the ethnic hierarchy is one form, but power in the novel is, multifaceted.
You mean like political power, the Soviets, the Taliban?
Exactly, but also social power, ethnicity, as we said, but also gender and even personal power dynamic.
And families, friendships.
Yeah. And the most brutal example of power abuse, the one that really defines so much, is the rape of Hassan.
Ugh. It's just horrific. A complete violation by Asif using his perceived superiority.
It's the ultimate symbol of that unchecked violent power. And then, crucially, you have Amir's reaction, or rather, his lack of reaction.
It's just silence.
His silence, his failure to intervene, his inability to even speak about it afterwards. That raises huge questions about complicity, doesn't it?
It really does. That silence hangs over so much of the book. But then later on, he does act. He goes back to rescue Sohrab.
Right, and that's such a powerful contrast. He's confronting Asif, confronting that same kind of violent power that destroyed Hassan's childhood.
So it's like his personal journey is also about learning to stand up to that kind of abusive power.
I think so. His initial failure and his later, very dangerous resistance show the choices individuals face. Do you uphold the unjust system, maybe through silence, or do you challenge it, even at great personal cost?
It makes you weigh the cost of silence versus the cost of action.
Wow. Okay, and you mentioned gender as another aspect of power. The novel tackles that too.
It does, yeah. It protests against gender inequality in some pretty stark ways. You see these double standards clearly.
Like with Soraya, how she's judged for her past.
Exactly. Soraya faces judgment while Amir's past betrayals are, different in the eyes of society. And think about her mother, Khala Jamila, being forbidden to sing in public.
Oh, right. Silencing her artistic force.
It's symbolic of that broader silencing of women. Even Sanabar, Hassan's mother, is punished partly for her beauty and her defiance of norms.
And then under the Taliban, it becomes extreme.
Absolutely extreme. Women denied education, agency, basic freedoms. It shows the devastating impact of that patriarchal control, both within families and at the state level. It's another layer of oppression the book forces us to see. Let's talk about religion. It's handled in a really interesting, kind of complex way.
It is. It's not a simple religion is good or religion is bad portrayal. There's a contrast.
Okay, how so?
Well, you have someone like Baba. He openly questions the mullahs, the religious leaders, yet he has this incredibly strong personal moral code, this sense of justice.
Right. His actions define his ethics more than religious dogma.
Exactly. It suggests a kind of maybe personal or true faith based on morality. And then you contrast that sharply with the Taliban.
Who use religion completely differently.
Completely. They weaponize it. They twist religious doctrine to justify horrific violence, executions, banning kite flying, music, oppression.
That scene at the soccer stadium?
Ugh, yes. Using prayer right before an execution. And Asif believing he's on some kind of divine mission while committing atrocities.
It's a chilling look at extremism.
And Hosseini seems to be arguing, I think, for a faith rooted in compassion, in justice, not the fear and control pushed by the extremists. It makes you question what faith really means.
Yeah, definitely. And throughout all this, there's the constant backdrop of war and politics. You can't separate the personal stories from the larger historical context.
No, you absolutely can't. The novel really drives home how international politics and conflict just devastate individual lives.
Like the Soviet invasion forcing families like Amirs to flee.
Precisely. And then the Civil War, the rise of the Taliban. Hosseini even subtly points to the complex history, like the U.S. involvement with groups that became the Taliban.
Right, that irony. And the mention of American bombs later.
It shows Afghanistan as this place caught between superpowers, suffering immensely from both external interference and internal strife. It's not just a setting, it's almost a character defined by resilience amidst that suffering.
And amidst all that chaos and suffering, Amir becomes a writer. That feels really significant.
Oh, it's hugely significant. Storytelling itself becomes a major theme.
How does his writing function in the story?
It's got multiple roles, really. For Amir personally, it's a way to process his past, to understand it, maybe to deal with his guilt.
Okay.
But it also becomes more, it evolves into a way of telling the truth, of sharing stories that need to be heard. It becomes his own form of protest, his way of speaking out.
So by writing his own story, the painful parts included, he finds a way to speak for others too, like Hassan, maybe.
I think that's definitely part of it. He achieves a kind of reconciliation, and his writing breaks a silence, both personal and maybe societal.
And you can't help but think about Hosseini himself writing this novel.
Exactly. It mirrors the author's own purpose, doesn't it? Using storytelling to humanize the headlines, to break the silence around Afghan experiences for a wider audience.
So storytelling as resistance, both inside the book and the book itself, that's powerful.
Very powerful. It challenges dominant narratives and hopefully builds empathy.
Despite all the darkness, the violence, the betrayals, the ending has this glimmer of hope. It's not entirely bleak.
No, it isn't. And that's important. Amir taking in Sohrab, deciding to care for him, that's a huge act of redemption.
It feels like he's finally doing something concrete.
Yes. It's moving beyond just guilt and into action. It shows that fighting for justice doesn't always have to be grand political gestures. It can be these personal acts of care and resistance.
Small acts matter.
They do. And that final scene, flying the kite with Sohrab after everything.
For you, 1,000 times over.
Right. It doesn't erase the trauma, but it offers this symbol of possible healing, of connection, of the spirit enduring.
So bringing it all together for, say, an English student trying to analyze this, what's the main takeaway about the Kite Runner as protest?
I think the key thing is to see beyond just the personal drama, as moving as it is. You need to recognize how Hosseini uses that story to stage a profound critique.
A critique
Of power imbalances, political failures, ethnic prejudice, gender inequality, the misuse of religion, all these systemic issues that crush individual lives.
Yeah.
The novel is a protest against silence and indifference. It insists that these stories matter, that these lives matter. And it suggests that even in terrible circumstances, acts of courage, truth-telling, and connection offer a path toward, if not complete resolution, then at least redemption and change.
So for you, the student really digging into the Kite Runner, maybe step back and ask yourself, How does seeing the novel as this act of protest change how you read it?
Yeah, does it deepen your appreciation? Does it make certain scenes or character choices resonate differently?
And maybe think broader, too. What other books have you read that might be doing something similar? Using personal stories to comment on bigger social or political issues, maybe in ways you didn't notice at first.
That's a great final thought. Seeing literature through that lens as a potential tool for commentary and change, it just adds this whole other layer to reading, doesn't it?
It really does. It makes you appreciate the power of a well-told story on a whole new level.